The rain fell in heavy, unrelenting sheets that night, swallowing the narrow mountain road in darkness. Thunder cracked through the valley as flashes of lightning revealed a twisting path slick with mud and leaves. Ethan Walker, a single father and local mechanic, gripped the steering wheel of his old pickup, his knuckles white under the dim glow of the dashboard. He wasn't afraid of storms, he'd driven through plenty before, but tonight was different. His 7-year-old daughter, Lila, was at home burning with fever, and he'd just spent hours in town hunting for medicine after the last pharmacy had run out. Now, every minute counted. The sound of his windshield wipers fought to keep pace with the storm, smearing water across the glass in rhythmic desperation. He leaned forward, squinting into the downpour, praying to make it home before the mountain roads turned to rivers. Then, out of nowhere, his headlights caught a flash of silver ahead. He slammed on the brakes. Tires screeched on wet asphalt as the truck skidded sideways before halting just feet from what looked like a mangled car. Heart pounding, Ethan jumped out into the storm, his boots splashing through icy puddles. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the thunder. The wreckage lay at the bottom of a small embankment, a sleek black sedan, its front end crumpled against a pine tree. The air smelled of burnt rubber and gasoline. Ethan scrambled down the muddy slope, his flashlight beam flickering across the shattered windshield. Inside, a woman was slumped against the deflated airbag, her face streaked with blood and rain. Her elegant clothes were torn, and one of her heels lay in the mud outside the car. He forced open the jammed door with a grunt, the metal groaning in protest. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he said, reaching in carefully. Her eyelids fluttered. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't respond. Then a faint whisper escaped her trembling lips, so soft he almost missed it. "Please, don't leave me here." The words hit him like lightning, cutting through the noise and chaos. It wasn't just fear in her voice, it was desperation, the kind that comes from someone who's been fighting too long, alone. Ethan's mind flashed back to another night years ago, when his wife, Emily, had been in an accident. He hadn't made it in time to save her, and those same words, "don't leave me," had haunted him ever since. He couldn't live through that again, not if he could help it. Without another thought, he unbuckled her seatbelt and gently lifted her into his arms. She gasped in pain, her hand clutching weakly at his jacket, but he only held her tighter, shielding her from the rain with his body. "You're okay," he murmured, his voice steady though his heart raced. "You're safe now. I've got you." The woman's breathing was shallow, her head resting against his chest as he trudged up the slope toward his truck. The mud tugged at his boots, and the rain blinded him, but he didn't stop. Every step forward felt like a promise, to her, to Emily, to himself. By the time he laid her gently on the truck's passenger seat, she was half-conscious, whispering something incoherent. He wrapped her in his flannel jacket and brushed wet hair from her forehead. The dashboard lights reflected her pale face, making her look fragile, almost otherworldly. Ethan started the engine, ignoring the cold seeping into his bones. "Hang on," he said quietly as he turned the truck toward home. The mountain road stretched before him, dark and treacherous, but he didn't hesitate. Behind him, the wreckage disappeared into the storm, swallowed by the night. The woman's faint breathing was the only sound beside the rumble of the engine. And as the wipers beat against the glass, Ethan felt something stir in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Tonight, he had no idea that saving a stranger from the rain would change both of their lives forever. By the time Ethan reached his small cabin on the edge of Pine Hollow, the rain had slowed to a cold drizzle. The night was still and heavy, the forest whispering with the sound of dripping leaves. He parked his truck in front of the porch and carried the unconscious woman inside, careful not to jostle her injured leg. The cabin was modest, just 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a wood stove flickering with orange light, but it was warm and safe, a haven from the storm. Ethan laid her gently on the old couch near the fire, then hurried to check on his daughter. Little Lila stirred weakly under her blanket, her forehead still warm but no longer burning. "Daddy?" she murmured, rubbing her eyes. Who's that lady? Her tiny voice was filled with curiosity and concern. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, someone who needs our help, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. Daddy's got it handled. Lila nodded, trusting him completely, and drifted off again. Ethan sighed with relief, then turned back to the woman on his couch. He fetched his first aid kit from the bathroom and began cleaning her wounds with gentle precision. His hands, rough from years of working with engines and tools, were surprisingly steady as he dabbed away the blood on her temple and bandaged the cut. She stirred once, flinching slightly, but didn't wake. Her features were delicate, almost regal, high cheekbones, long lashes, and a faint scar near her collarbone that told of some older pain. Her clothes, though soaked and torn, were expensive. Whoever she was, she didn't belong in a place like this. Ethan draped a blanket over her and tossed another log into the fire. He couldn't help but watch her for a moment longer, the soft glow casting shadows across her face. Something about her presence tugged at him, a memory he couldn't quite place. When morning came, sunlight filtered weakly through the curtains. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and silent. Ethan was making coffee when he heard a faint groan from the couch. He turned to see her sitting up slowly, blinking in confusion. Her eyes were a startling shade of gray, clear and searching. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You're safe," Ethan said gently, setting a cup of water beside her. "You were in an accident last night. I found you on Route 7 and brought you here." She tried to stand, but winced as pain shot through her leg. "Easy," he warned, steadying her. "You've got a nasty bruise. You should rest." She hesitated, glancing around the small cabin, at the tools hanging by the door, the faint smell of motor oil mixed with pine, and the photographs of Ethan and Lila on the mantel. "You live here?" she asked, as though the idea of someone surviving so simply amazed her. Ethan nodded. "Just me and my daughter." A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face, envy, maybe, or sorrow. "Thank you," she murmured after a long pause. "You didn't have to help me." Ethan shrugged. "Didn't feel right to leave you there." Her lips parted, as if she wanted to say more, but instead she turned toward the window, her eyes glistening. "I don't even remember the last time someone said that to me," she whispered. He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "That you're safe." She smiled faintly, though her voice broke when she replied, "That I mattered." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he handed her a bowl of soup instead. She held it between trembling hands, staring into the steam. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Clara," she said after a moment. "Clara Reed." The name rang a bell. He'd seen it on a billboard once, beneath the face of a confident CEO promoting some luxury real estate firm. But looking at her now, barefoot, bruised, wrapped in one of his old flannel blankets, he couldn't reconcile that image with the woman sitting before him. Clara stared into the fire, her voice soft and distant. "I thought I had everything," she said. "But maybe I forgot what it feels like to just be human." Ethan studied her quietly, sensing the storm behind her calm tone. He didn't know who she really was or what she was running from, but one thing was clear, this woman had been strong for far too long. And as the fire crackled between them, Ethan realized that sometimes, even the strongest people need someone to remind them they're allowed to fall apart. The morning brought a fragile calm to Pine Hollow. The storm had passed, but its echoes still lingered in the dripping trees and soaked earth. Inside the cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and coffee, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt something close to peace. Clara sat near the fire, wrapped in one of his thick blankets, her gray eyes fixed on the dancing flames. Her hair, now dry and neatly brushed by Lila's tiny hands, framed her face in soft waves that made her look younger, more fragile. Lila adored her already. She had spent the morning showing Clara her drawings and telling stories about her school, her favorite cookies, and how her dad fixed everything. Ethan watched the two of them from the kitchen table, his heart stirring at the rare sound of laughter filling his home. Clara's laugh was delicate, uncertain, as if she'd forgotten how to do it, but it warmed the entire room. By midday, the road crew still hadn't cleared the fallen trees, trapping them together for another day. Ethan didn't mind. There was something about Clara that drew him in, something deeper than her beauty or mystery. It was the way she looked at things, like she was searching for pieces of herself she'd lost somewhere along the way. As the afternoon wore on, she began to move more easily, though her legs still ached. She offered to help him chop vegetables for dinner, and though she clearly wasn't used to holding a kitchen knife, she tried. When she nicked her finger slightly, Ethan reached over instinctively, taking her hand to bandage it. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them shifted, quiet, charged, tender. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said softly. "You don't owe me anything." Clara's voice wavered. "That's just it. I'm not used to people helping me without wanting something in return." That night, after Lila went to bed, Ethan sat by the window, fixing a broken lantern while Clara stood nearby, gazing out at the rain beginning to fall again. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, Ethan asked, "So, who were you running from, Clara?" She froze, her fingers tightening around the edge of her blanket. "Who says I was running?" she murmured. "You had that look," he said gently. "I've seen it before, in people trying to leave their whole life behind." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned toward him, her face shadowed by the flickering light. "You're right," she admitted quietly. "I was running, from everything I thought I wanted. My company. My fiancé. My perfect image. I built a life that looked flawless from the outside, but inside, I was falling apart. I didn't even recognize the woman in the mirror anymore." Her words came faster then, years of exhaustion breaking through her calm exterior. "Last night, I was supposed to be at a charity gala. Cameras, reporters, investors, all watching me smile like nothing was wrong. I couldn't do it. I just got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going until the rain hit and the road disappeared. Maybe I didn't care if it did." Ethan put down his tools and moved closer, his voice quiet but firm. "You cared enough to ask someone not to leave you." Clara's eyes glistened as she looked at him. "Do you ever wonder if you're living the wrong life?" He nodded slowly. "Every day after my wife died. But Lila reminded me there's still good in the world. Even broken people can start over." Tears slipped down Clara's cheeks, and Ethan didn't look away. She laughed softly through her tears, embarrassed. "I haven't cried in years," she whispered. "I forgot what it feels like." Ethan handed her a handkerchief, his voice low. "Then maybe this is where you start remembering." She smiled faintly, clutching the fabric. Outside, the rain softened into a gentle drizzle, tapping against the window like a lullaby. Clara fell asleep on the couch again that night, her face finally peaceful. As Ethan draped a blanket over her shoulders, he realized something had changed, not just for her, but for him too. The woman who had stumbled into his life broken and lost had somehow brought light back into his home. And as he watched the rain fade into dawn, he couldn't help but wonder if fate had brought her there not to be saved, but to save him. The morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight spilling through the forest like gold. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind the scent of pine and the hush of renewal. For the first time in days, the road out of Pine Hollow was open again. The radio crackled with updates about fallen trees being cleared, power lines repaired, and the main highway now safe to travel. Clara stood by the window of Ethan's cabin, gazing out at the glistening trees. The air was still cool, the ground damp, but the world looked alive again. Inside, the fire had burned low, its last embers glowing faintly in the hearth. Clara felt an ache deep in her chest, not from her injuries, but from something else entirely. The thought of leaving this place, this quiet refuge, felt heavier than she had expected. Behind her, Ethan was fixing a latch on the back door, his sleeves rolled up, grease and sawdust clinging to his skin. He worked silently, focused as always, unaware that she was watching him. For 3 days, this small cabin had become something it hadn't been for her in years, a home. The laughter of Lila, the soft crackle of fire, the smell of pancakes in the morning, all of it had awakened something in Clara that she thought was lost forever. She had spent years surrounded by glass towers and cold boardrooms, where success was measured in numbers and not in kindness. Yet, here, in the middle of nowhere, she'd found warmth. When the sound of an approaching engine broke the silence, Clara's heart sank. A sleek black car pulled up outside, a company vehicle. Her assistant, Mark, stepped out, dressed impeccably even on a dirt road. He spotted her through the window and waved, relief etched across his face. "Ms. Reed," he called, rushing toward the porch. "Thank God you're okay. The news said your car went off the highway, we've been searching for days." Clara hesitated before stepping outside. The crisp air hit her cheeks as she faced him, her pulse quickening. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Thanks to him." She glanced at Ethan, who had followed her out, wiping his hands on a rag. Mark's eyes flicked between them, confusion evident. "Ms. Reed, your fiancé's been worried sick. The press is asking questions. We need to get you back before this becomes a scandal." The word fiancé hit Ethan harder than he expected, though he tried not to show it. He nodded curtly, retreating a step. Clara noticed. She turned to Mark. "Tell them I'll return when I'm ready." Mark blinked. "But, when I'm ready," she repeated firmly, her voice regaining the authority of a woman used to commanding rooms. Mark sighed but nodded, heading back to the car to make some calls. Clara turned back to Ethan. "You really saved me," she said quietly. "You didn't know who I was, but you didn't care." He shrugged. "Didn't need to. You were someone who needed help. That was enough." His words were simple, but they hit deeper than any speech she'd ever heard in a boardroom. Lila ran outside just then, her small boots splashing through puddles. "Are you leaving?" she asked, her voice trembling. Clara knelt down, hugging the little girl tightly. "I have to, sweetheart. But I'll come back. I promise." Lila's arms tightened around her neck. "You pinky promise?" Clara smiled through the sting in her throat and hooked her pinky around the girl's. "Always." She rose and turned to Ethan, her voice softer. "You gave me more than safety, Ethan. You reminded me what it means to feel alive again." He looked at her, unsure how to respond. "You'll do fine back there," he said at last. "You're stronger than you think." She nodded, but her eyes glistened. "Maybe. But I think strength looks different now." Then, before she could lose her nerve, she stepped forward and hugged him. He stiffened for a moment, then his arms came around her, steady and sure, the way they had been that first night in the rain. When they pulled apart, she smiled faintly. "Please, don't let this be goodbye," she whispered. He met her gaze, a rare warmth flickering in his eyes. "It doesn't have to be," he said quietly. "Just come back when you're ready." Weeks later, the townsfolk began to whisper about the new cafe that had opened downtown, a cozy place filled with the smell of coffee and laughter. Few knew that the woman behind the counter had once been a high-powered CEO, or that the man who stopped by every morning to fix things around the shop was the same mechanic who had carried her out of the storm. But anyone who looked closely could see it, the quiet way their eyes met, the softness in their smiles, the unspoken bond between two souls who had once been strangers in the rain, and had somehow found home in each other.